Well, we have breaking news today. On a 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court has thrown out President Trump's global tariffs. We'll discuss what happens next, and we are waiting for the president to make some remarks. We're going to carry that live when he does appear at the White House. We're also planning to discuss today the recent decision of the Plastic Surgery Society to stop providing transgender surgeries to minors with Dr. Scott Glassberg. He is here. We're going to talk about that later in the hour, and we are also going to get the latest on Iran war planning with Rebecca Heinrichs. These are the things that we have planned today here on Friday, February 20th. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings reporting for Salem and live today from New York City. But we are a little fluid and a little flexible today as we are watching the White House briefing podium. We are waiting for the President of the United States to come out and react to the bombshell that landed around 10 o'clock this morning. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled the president exceeded his authority by using a 1977 law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, you hear it called sometimes, to impose sweeping global tariffs. Again, we're waiting for the president to emerge at the White House. He was originally scheduled to come out at 12:45. It is now 1:07 Eastern Time here in New York City, and I've got an eye on the podium. When the president comes out, we are going to bring you his remarks. This case at the Supreme Court involved two categories of tariffs. Trump imposed one category on virtually every country in the world. This was the Liberation Day tariffs from last April. He imposed the other set of tariffs on Mexico, on Canada, and China over their responsibility for the flow of illegal fentanyl into the United States. The ruling from the Supreme Court today invalidates both. However, the ruling does not invalidate all of the tariffs that Donald Trump has imposed. Tariffs imposed under other legal authorities do remain in place, such as Section 232 tariffs. These are national security based on things like steel and aluminum. And Section 301 tariffs. This has to do with unfair trade practices. And there are other targeted levies on specific products like copper or individual goods. Those remain in place. But the Liberation Day tariffs, the president's view that he has the authority and the need to personally and unilaterally set tariff rates on other nations of this world for economic and diplomatic purposes, has been defeated, and soundly defeated, in a 6-3 ruling at the Supreme Court. Writing for the majority today, Chief Justice John Roberts said, quote, "Had Congress intended to convey the distinct and extraordinary power to impose tariffs, it would have done so expressly," end quote. It seems that the six in the majority are saying that their view is that this much power cannot be concentrated in the hands of one person in our government, even the President of the United States. The six justices who make up the majority here are Roberts, the chief, Neil Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett, Trump appointees. So you had three conservatives, and then joining them were the three liberals, Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Elena Kagan. Interestingly, it is a long document, and there are lots of writings, and the six didn't quite agree on why they were invalidating the tariffs. They knew they were just invalidating them nonetheless. Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh are the three on the dissent. Now, last summer, I interviewed the president on this radio program. I asked him about this very day. I'll play his answer for you. This was September 2nd of last year. Let's hear cut number 10 from the Scott Jennings Show.
Well, Mr. President, you brought it up, so let me shift to the courts. Obviously, heading into the weekend, there was a ruling on your tariff policy. A court of appeals ruled that most of the tariffs are unconstitutional. You'll be appealing that to the Supreme Court. Two questions. One, how confident are you in winning at the Supreme Court? And number two, what are you prepared to do if you don't? What could be done beyond that?
Well, I'm not going to be thinking about you don't, because it's only bad answers. It will be a disaster if that is lost for our country. Our country will be weak, pathetic, and not rich. It will be, I've put us in a position, even negotiating. I negotiated 7 peace deals because I was able to use tariffs. Without tariffs, many of those deals, half of those deals, I wouldn't have been able to do. It gives us tremendous negotiating power. It gives us tremendous economic power. And it's the same exact thing that they've done to us for 30 years, and they're still doing it. If that decision would be lost, it would be an economic disaster for the United States. The United States will be the richest country. If we lose that decision, we'll be one of the very poor countries.
That was a clip from the Scott Jennings show on September 2nd last year. I was asking the president to anticipate a day where the Supreme Court might in fact invalidate his tariffs. Again, the breaking news today is that the court ruled 6-3 that the Liberation Day tariffs the president imposed are unconstitutional, and he cannot do it. However, if you look at the dissent from Justice Brett Kavanaugh, he did offer a bit of a roadmap for the president under other statutory authorities to reimpose tariffs. So if you're wondering whether the president is at a dead end here, he may not be. Let me tell you what we're doing on the show today. We are waiting for the President of the United States to emerge at the White House. There had been an advertised 12:45 p.m. Eastern appearance of the president to discuss the tariff ruling and to take questions from the assembled press in the White House briefing room. I'm looking at a feed right now of the podium in the White House press briefing room. The media is assembled. A few moments ago, we did see someone put 2 fingers in front of the camera, which seemed to indicate possibly that they maybe thought the president was coming out in the next couple of minutes. What we're doing is we're monitoring this, and we are going to bring you the president's comments here on the Scott Jennings show. We did have some other conversations planned today, but we're going to pay attention to the president. This is a major deal. The president, after implementing these tariffs, has talked broadly about how he believes these are necessary economic tools, how he believes these are necessary diplomatic tools. The president, I am sure this morning, based on my own knowledge and conversations with the president, was apoplectic when he heard that the court had thrown out his tariffs. Again, we're watching the White House podium and waiting for President Trump. You're listening to Common Sense for the American People. This is Scott Jennings reporting to you here on Salem. We do have some other conversations that we're planning today, but I am willing to shift those around based on what President Trump does. I do have an interesting conversation coming up scheduled here at the bottom of the hour, 33 minutes past the hour, with Dr. Scott Glassberg. He is a former president of the American Plastic Surgeons Society. You might remember the other day we were reporting on this. The plastic surgeons did an about-face on recommending transgender surgeries for minors. They now oppose transgender surgeries for minors. This had huge reverberations throughout the medical community. I invited Dr. Glassberg on to talk about how they arrived at that decision and why they arrived at that decision. We also have our international affairs and national security expert, Rebecca Heinrichs. She is on deck today to talk about the latest in Iran war planning. We haven't heard much out of the White House today. All the news has been focused on the tariffs, but we are still watching a huge military buildup of the United States in the Middle East, and there is some reporting that the president is considering possibly some initial limited strikes to perhaps drive Iran back to the discussion table and to talk more about dismantling their nuclear weapons program. It's Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings broadcasting here on Salem. Let's do this. Let's talk about Relief Factor. We are getting notes in on Relief Factor from around the country, and then let's take a commercial break, and then we'll come back and see where we are with President Trump. I do have a listener note here from Eileen in Kentucky. Eileen is 87 years old, and she told me there was a point where walking had become very difficult. She figured it was just part of getting older, and then she tried Relief Factor. She says she's walking again. She's even dancing around to music on her television. Her words were quite simple. She has no pain. She started out taking 3 packets a day. Now she's down to 2, and she says Relief Factor made a real difference in her life. If you have tried other things, if pain is stopping you from living the life that you want to live, my recommendation is you try Relief Factor. They have a 3-week quick start plan. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com and ask yourself, how would it feel to be out of pain? Again, this is a special breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show. We're waiting for President Trump to emerge at the White House. We're going to take a break, and we're going to bring you the president when he does come out. Stay with us here on Salem right after this. Hey, it's Scott. I want to talk to you about our friends at Balance of Nature. You can find them, by the way, at balanceofnature.com. They have this thing called the Balance of Nature Whole Health System. These supplements are perfect for a resolution in the new year. It's kind of tough to stick with New Year's resolutions, and that's why Balance of Nature's Whole Health System supplements are one of the easiest ways to do it. They're very versatile. You do 2 scoops of fiber and spice and mix it easily into drinks, and it adds a warm, aromatic depth. You can also open 3 of your fruit supplements and mix the powder into a smoothie, or sprinkle 3 of the veggie supplements over one of the savory dishes that you're having for dinner. It's called Balance of Nature's Whole Health System. These supplements include 47 ingredients of 100% whole fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers, perfect for your daily routine. 50% off if you do it now for 1 year when you subscribe to the Whole Health System from our friends at Balance of Nature. Get it at balanceofnature.com.
You've heard the narratives. Now get the truth. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Friday, February 20th, a breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show here on Salem. We are going to take you now live to the White House in Washington, D.C. President of the United States addressing the country and the assembled press about the 6-3 decision striking down his tariffs today. Here is President Donald J. Trump.
Wow, that's a lot of people. That's a new record. We set a record every time. Well, thank you very much for being here. The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. I'd like to thank and congratulate Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh for their strength and wisdom and love of our country, which is right now very proud of those justices. When you read the dissenting opinions, there's no way that anyone can argue against them. There's no way. Foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years are ecstatic. They're so happy. And they're dancing in the streets, but they won't be dancing for long, that I can assure you. The Democrats on the court are thrilled, but they will automatically vote no. They're an automatic no, just like in Congress. They're an automatic no. They're against anything that makes America strong, healthy, and great again. They also are a, frankly, disgrace to our nation, those justices. They're an automatic no, no matter how good a case you have. It's a no. But you can't knock their loyalty. It's one thing you can do with some of our people. Others think they're being politically correct, which has happened before far too often with certain members of this court, and it's happened so often with this court. What a shame. Having to do with voting in particular, when in fact they're just being fools and lapdogs for the rhinos and the radical left Democrats, and not that this should have anything at all to do with it. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution. It's my opinion that the court has been swayed by foreign interests and a political movement that is far smaller than people would ever think. It's a small movement. I won by millions of votes. We won in a landslide. With all the cheating that went on, there was a lot of it, but we still won in a landslide. Too big to rig. But these people are obnoxious, ignorant, and loud. They're very loud, and I think certain justices are afraid of that. They don't want to do the right thing. They're afraid of it. This was an important case to me, more as a symbol of economic national security, and also, I would say, just for our country itself, so important, because we're doing so well as a country. We've never done so well. The good news is that there are methods, practices, statutes, and authorities, as recognized by the entire court in this terrible decision, and also as recognized by Congress, which they refer to, that are even stronger than the IEEPA tariffs available to me as President of the United States. And in actuality, I was very modest in my ask of other countries and businesses because I wanted to do, and it's very important, I wanted to be very well behaved because I wanted to do anything, I didn't want to do anything that would affect the decision of the court, because I understand the court. I understand how they are very easily swayed. I want to be a good boy. I have very effectively utilized tariffs over the past year to make America great again. Our stock market has just recently broken 50,000 on the Dow, and simultaneously, and even more amazingly, broken 7,000 on the S&P, two numbers that everybody thought upon our landslide election victory could not be attained. Think of that. Nobody thought it was possible to do it within 4 years, and we did it in 1 year. They said you'll never be able, you'll go back and you read the geniuses, read their statements, all of the Nobel Prize winners.
This is Scott Jennings with breaking news coverage here on the Salem Radio Network. You've been listening live to President Donald J. Trump speaking at the White House, reacting to the Supreme Court's 6-3 ruling invalidating most of his global tariffs. We're going to pause the president right there. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue listening to the president's reaction to the Supreme Court's 6-3 ruling. It's Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings. You're listening to this breaking news coverage on Salem. I encourage you to stay with us. Hey, it's Scott, and I'm so excited to welcome Crowd Health as a new partner to the Scott Jennings Show. For several years, I'm hearing more people voicing frustration with traditional health insurance. Bad incentives baked into Obamacare have sent costs soaring. The rules are a maze of jargon, and people feel stuck. That's why I want to tell you about my new partner, Crowd Health. Crowd Health isn't insurance. It's a community that cuts out the middleman to help one another fund medical expenses, giving you more freedom, fewer surprises, and greater control over your healthcare choices. And when it comes to cost, members are spending hundreds less per month compared to traditional insurance. Right now, you can get started for just $99 per month for your first 3 months when you use the code SCOTT. Go to joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com and use code SCOTT. Again, joincrowdhealth.com, code SCOTT. Quick reminder, Crowd Health is not insurance. You can opt out, take your power back, and that is how we win.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
It is Friday, February 20th. This is a special breaking news edition of Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings here on Salem. We're going to go back to the White House now. The president is reacting to the Supreme Court 6-3 decision. 3 conservatives and 3 liberals on the court joined forces today to strike down most of his global tariff policy. The president is reacting at the White House. Here's President Trump.
Said, no, you couldn't do it in 4 years. Well, we didn't do it in 4 years. We did it in 1 year. We broke every record in the book, and we're continuing to do so. Tariffs have likewise been used to end 5 of the 8 wars that I settled. I settled 8 wars, whether you like it or not, including India, Pakistan, big ones, nuclear, could have been nuclear. Prime Minister of Pakistan said yesterday at the great meeting that we had, the Peace Board, he said yesterday that President Trump could have saved 35 million lives by getting us to stop fighting. They were getting ready to do some bad things. But they've given us great national security, these tariffs have. And together with our strong borders, reduced fentanyl coming into our country by 30%. When I use them as a penalty against countries illegally sending this poison into our country to poison our youth. All of those tariffs remain. They all remain. I don't know if you know that or not. They all remain. We're still getting them, and we will after the decision. I guess there's nobody left to appeal to. But again, those three people, such respect. I've had a lot of respect for them anyway, but such great respect. But other alternatives will now be used to replace the ones that the court incorrectly rejected. We have alternatives, great alternatives. Could be more money. We'll take in more money, and we'll be a lot stronger for it. We're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars. We'll continue to do so. To show you how ridiculous the opinion is, however, the court said that I'm not allowed to charge even $1. I can't charge $1. Can't charge $1. I would have used 1 penny, but we don't make the pennies anymore. We save money. Can't charge $1 to any country under IEPA. Not $1. I assume to protect other countries. This must have been done to protect those other countries, certainly not the United States of America, which they should be interested in protecting. That's what they're supposed to be protecting. But I am allowed to cut off any and all trade or business with that same country. In other words, I can destroy the trade. I can destroy the country. I'm even allowed to impose a foreign country destroying embargo. I can embargo. I can do anything I want, but I can't charge $1. Because that's not what it says. And that's not the way it even reads. I can do anything I want to do to them, but I can't charge any money. So I'm allowed to destroy the country, but I can't charge them a little fee. I could give them a little 2-cent fee, but I cannot charge under any circumstances. I cannot charge them anything. Think of that. How ridiculous is that? I'm allowed to embargo them. I'm allowed to tell them you can't do business in the United States anymore. We want you out of here. But if I want to charge them $10, I can't do that. It's incorrect. Their decision's incorrect. But it doesn't matter because we have very powerful alternatives that have been approved by this decision. You know, they've been approved by the decision for those that thought they had us. And they're saying that I have the absolute right to license, but not the right to charge a license fee. So think of that. I have the right to license, which is a very powerful word. In many ways, license is more powerful than tariffs. In fact, I was thinking about using it. But they came up with the idea that I can license, just like the people that were opposing me told them to do, but not the right to charge a license fee. Think of that. Who ever heard of such a thing? What license has ever been issued without the right to charge a fee? You get a license, you charge a fee. It's automatic, but not with this court. But now the court has given me the unquestioned right to ban all sorts of things from coming into our country, to destroy foreign countries, but a much more powerful right than many people ever thought we even had, but not the right to charge a fee. How crazy is that? Our country is the hottest country anywhere in the world right now. And it was a dead country 1.5 years ago under an incompetent president. But now I'm going to go in a different direction, probably the direction that I should have gone the first time, but I read the language. I'm very good at reading language, and it read our way 100%, but now I'll go the way I could have gone originally, which is even stronger than our original choice. As Justice Kavanaugh, whose stock has gone so up, you have to see, I'm so proud of him, wrote in his dissent, although I firmly disagree with the court's holding today, the decision might not substantially constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. So, think of that. The decision might not substantially constrain. And it doesn't, he's right. In fact, I can charge much more than I was charging. So I'm going to just start. Although I firmly disagree with the court's holding today, the decision might not substantially constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. That's because numerous other federal statutes, which is so true, authorize the president to impose tariffs and might justify most, if not all, of the tariffs issued in this case. Even more tariffs, actually. Those statutes include, think of that, Those statutes include, for example, the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, Section 232. All of these things I know so well. The Trade Act of 1974, Sections 122, 201, 301. And the Tariff Act of 1930, Section 338, all clear. But it's a little bit longer process. I thought I'd make things simple, but they didn't let us do that. I would like to thank Justice Kavanaugh for frankly, his genius and his great ability. Very proud of that appointment. In actuality, while I am sure that they did not mean to do so, the Supreme Court's decision today made a president's ability to both regulate trade and impose tariffs more powerful and more crystal clear rather than less. I don't think they meant that. I'm sure they didn't. It's terrible. And to think that the Democrats who oppose this only because they want to go the opposite way, they'd like to pack the court. They want to put on 21 people. They want to pack the court, pack the Supreme Court. Maybe they should do it. Maybe they would be better off if they did it. They want to pack the court. They want to do anything to hurt our country. There will no longer be any doubt, and the income coming in and the protection of our companies and country will actually increase because of this decision. I don't think the court meant that, but it's the way it is. Based on long-standing law and hundreds of victories, and even, as I was pointed out before, even thousands of victories over the years, to the contrary, the Supreme Court did not overrule tariffs. They merely overruled a particular use of IEEPA tariffs. And essentially, it's used to get a fee. I can do anything I want with IEEPA, anything. I just can't charge anybody for it. I can license, I just can't charge them. It's ridiculous, but it's okay because we have other ways, numerous other ways. The ability to block, embargo, restrict, license, or impose any other condition on a foreign country's ability to conduct trade with the United States under IEEPA has been fully confirmed by this decision. So now there's no doubt, because, you know, there were a lot of questions about tariffs because no president was smart enough to use them to protect our country from those countries and businesses that were ripping us off. You took a look at the deficits that we had with some of these countries. It was disgraceful what they got away with for many, many decades. But now we know, because this decision affirms all those things that some people weren't sure about. In order to protect, and it says so, in order to protect our country, a president can actually charge more tariffs than I was charging in the past period of a year under the various tariff authorities. So we can use other of the statutes, other of the tariff authorities, which have also been confirmed and are fully allowed. Therefore, effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs, they're existing, they're there, remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I say quite simply, which I've said for a long time, make America great again. And interestingly, we've already made it great, so I don't have to use that, but I don't think we'll ever give up on MAGA. MAGA is always going to be with us. If you have a few questions, you can let us know. But just to end, so we're going forward, we will be able to take in more money.
This is Scott Jennings reporting here on Salem, a breaking news edition of Common Sense for the American People. You've been listening live at the White House to President Donald J. Trump addressing the country and addressing the media. about the 6-3 decision at the Supreme Court today, striking down his Liberation Day tariffs. However, at the end of the president's remarks, if you were listening closely, you heard him talk about other statutory avenues that he has to impose tariffs. And he is, in fact, announcing that he will sign an executive order this afternoon imposing a 10% global tariff using other statutes that were not bothered by the 6-3 Supreme Court decision. Again, the breaking news today is that the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, 3 conservatives and 3 liberals struck down the president's Liberation Day tariffs. However, in the dissent, Justice Kavanaugh, gave the president a roadmap of other statutes that he could use, and it sounds like that is what the president is doing. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to listen to some of the president's questions and answer time with the assembled media. We'll carry that live here on the Scott Jennings Show. First, a quick word from our friends at Done with Debt. If you are stressed out about getting out of debt, you need to listen to me. According to the Fed, many banks are tightening their standards. That means right now might be your best window to negotiate settlements on your own debt. Done with Debt is one of the best organizations we've ever seen here at navigating debt relief. Last year, they enrolled over $102 million in debt for our listeners and for others. They track the credit card and loan company behavior. They know what's going on in the banking system. They have all the experience and the expertise that you need. They help you through the debt relief process to keep more of your paycheck every single month. Do not wait for the lenders to tighten up their policies. Visit donewithdebt.com right now. Talk to a debt specialist. That is absolutely free, and it only takes a few minutes. Visit donewithdebt.com. We cannot recommend it highly enough. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll go back to the White House. President Trump taking questions from reporters on tariffs. You don't want to miss this breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
Fighting for free speech and Western civilization. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Breaking news edition here on Friday, February 20th of the Scott Jennings Show. Broadcasting live from New York City. The breaking news is the Supreme Court has thrown out the president's global tariff policy in a 6-3 ruling. We've been carrying the president's remarks from the White House, but if you thought he was going to throw up his hands, think again. The president, in other breaking news, has announced that he is signing an executive order to impose 10% global tariffs under Section 122, and these are tariffs that can last up to 150 days unless Congress votes to extend them. He's also initiating investigations under Section 301 and other authorities, which could ultimately allow him to levy other tariffs. So the president not giving up on his belief in tariffs despite the 6-3 adverse ruling from the court. Let's go back to the White House. The president now taking questions from the media. Here's President Trump in the briefing room.
But just to end, so we're going forward. We will be able to take in more money, and there'll no longer be doubt, because there was always doubt. I know the people that brought the lawsuit, and they're sleazebags, major sleazebags, but I know them, and they're foreign country centric. They were sending things into our country, and the people representing them knew full well, but they were sending things into our country, and they were beneficial to other countries, but very, very bad for us. And I stopped it, and we'll just keep it going. So we have a totally firm decision now. And I don't think the court meant it, because the court doesn't show great spirit toward our country, in my opinion. A lot of bad decisions, but there are usually ways around it. This is something we could have done, as Justice Kavanaugh said, we could have done this originally, but we're doing it now. And the numbers could be far greater than the hundreds of billions we've already taken in. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, I'm very curious.
Why didn't call you in the red?
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Justice Thomas and Alito, as you know, are the most conservative constitutional justices. Do you think that you'll get to appoint 2 more justices later this term with similar ideologies? And what type of vetting process will they go through to ensure they uphold?
I don't know, but they're great justices. That's all I can say. And I hope they're going to be around a long time. I hope they're going to stay healthy. They're great people. They're great. And Justice Alito, too, to add to the group. These are great men.
Right.
With a great love of our country and a great understanding of the law
Congress to take additional action on tariffs now? Have you
No, I don't
spoken
need to.
your
It's already been approved. I mean, I would ask Congress and probably get it. When people look at the real numbers, and you look at hundreds of billions of dollars that have come into our country. Yesterday, I was at a steel plant, as you know, and I went to great place, great plant, great, wonderful people. And they were telling me, I said to them, you were there, a lot of the press in this room. Of course, I don't think this plane's big enough to take the press in this room, but a lot of the press right here. We were in Georgia. And I said to the owner, I made a speech at a factory. They make steel products. And I said, how are you? Nice to meet you. How's business? President, I'd love to kiss you. This is a very powerful man. I don't want to be kissed by that man. But a very powerful, strong man. He's been in the steel business for many years. His father started it. And he said, sir, I want to kiss you. I said, why? He said, because we were down to working 1 hour a week. And then you came in and imposed tariffs. And all of that foreign junk that they were dropping into our country stopped. And we're now going to double shifts, 7 days a week, and we may be very soon going to 24 hours around the clock, almost 7 days a week. He said, sir, I want to kiss you so badly. And I said, no, thank you. But you know what? He just to finalize it, he said, oh, this is a great place in Georgia. He said, all up and down the highway, same exact answer, sir. We're all going out of business. We're going to go bankrupt. We're all going out of business. And now every one of us are thriving, and we're hiring people like we haven't. He said, like I've never, and he's been in business for, I think, 45 years, like we've never hired before. That's because of tariffs. And we're going to keep it going the same way. And you're going to start to see the results in a year from now when all those factories start that are under construction right now. You see all the construction numbers are so good. Those construction workers are building factories that are going to be open, including not only AI, which is big, but car plants coming in from Canada who ripped us off.
You're listening to Common Sense for the American People. It's a breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show. We've been listening live to President Donald J. Trump at the White House reacting to the Supreme Court's 6-3 decision striking down his global tariff policy. He is reinstituting other tariffs under other authorities, and he's at the podium taking questions. And we're going to take a break. We have another hour of the show to come. We're going to break it all down for you right here on Salem. I'm Scott Jennings. Breaking News Day. Stay with us.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show. Common Sense for the American people here on Friday, February 20th. Thank you all for joining us. The breaking news is the United States Supreme Court, in a 6-3 ruling, has thrown out President Trump's global tariffs. Most of the president's Liberation Day tariffs and most of the tariffs that he levied on Mexico and China and Canada regarding fentanyl have been invalidated by the court. However, the president made lengthy remarks at the White House over the last several minutes, and he has made other announcements. He is saying that all national security tariffs levied under Section 232 and other tariffs existing under 301 section are still in full force and in full effect. The court did not touch those. And on top of that, he is now installing a 10% global tariff under Section 122. So the president is pivoting to other statutory authorities to continue to levy tariffs across the world. Let's hear a little bit from the president. This was his initial reaction today at the White House podium in Cut 13.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. I'd like to thank and congratulate Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh for their strength and wisdom and love of our country, which is right now very proud of those justices. When you read the dissenting opinions, there's no way that anyone can argue against them. There's no way. Foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years are ecstatic. They're so happy. And they're dancing in the streets, but they won't be dancing for long, that I can assure you. The Democrats on the court are thrilled, but they will automatically vote no. They're an automatic no, just like in Congress. They're an automatic no. They're against anything that makes America strong, healthy, and great again.
That was the president just a little while ago at the White House podium. Quick check of the markets. How are the markets reacting to all of this? Well, the Dow Jones Industrial Average up about 0.38%, 188 points. The S&P 500 is up about 0.68%, and the NASDAQ is up nearly 1% at 220 points. So the market's having something of a slightly positive reaction. It seems to me that if you would watch the Supreme Court ruling today, you might not have been terribly surprised if you had also watched the arguments that did not go very well for the administration several months ago. To discuss all of this from the New York Post, an economics and finance reporter, Lydia Moynihan is here. Lydia, thanks for joining us here on the Scott Jennings Show. I know you've been watching. This is kind of your beat, and you've been watching all this unfold today, and you've seen the president's remarks. How does all this strike you?
Well, I don't think that it was a huge surprise, to your point, Scott. I think a lot of people looking at the tea leaves expected maybe something like this to happen. And to that end, you saw the administration preparing for the eventuality that the Supreme Court ruled exactly the way that they did today. And so that's why barely a couple hours passed before Donald Trump is out there speaking to the American people, which I love. I love that he's out there asking, or answering questions, rather. People are asking him whatever they want. He is so passionate about this and speaks so freely, and has already put in place basically a different way of accomplishing the same goal. And I also think, the fact that the market is up marginally, not too much, but it's not tanking, right? And that's because I think Donald Trump, even separate and apart from the whole tariff regime, still has the strongest economy that we've seen in years. And I think it speaks to the fact that he's deregulated, he's lowered taxes, he's created a really powerful engine here in America, so much so that tariff news can break and it barely budges what the markets are doing.
Lydia, one thing that I've been thinking about regarding the court is that we frequently hear from Democrats and the media that this court is a wholly owned subsidiary of Donald Trump, that he runs the court, that he tells them what to do and they do it, that he says jump and they say how high. That obviously did not happen here on the tariff case. You had 3 conservative justices and 3 liberals joining on the 6-3 majority to throw out these tariffs. Does this obliterate the Democratic narrative about the supposed lack of independence of the United States Supreme Court?
I think this was all a result of those No Kings protests. The Supreme Court heard that and thought, okay, we can't be in Donald Trump's pocket anymore. No, you make a great point. And of course, this is exactly how the government was designed by the founders, to have checks and balances. And so even if you're not happy with the outcome, the system is working exactly the way that it was created to work. And everyone who's saying that Donald Trump is a dictator, well, guess what? He acknowledged the Supreme Court made a decision and he has to abide by it. So I think tales of Donald Trump's dictatorship are once again greatly over-exaggerated. Scott, I'm curious to get your take. Rand Paul and some conservatives feel that in a way this provides a check on executive power, and that if a President AOC was to come in, God forbid, at some point in the future, maybe this would rein her in a little bit. I'm curious if you think that argument holds water at all.
Well, that is certainly what many conservatives are saying, is that if you look at the broad implications of this ruling, that if you had a Democrat in the future who, say, wanted to declare a climate emergency and then therefore take all sorts of sweeping executive action, this court is clearly signaling that it is not going to allow a president, in your scenario, AOC, to do that. I was also listening earlier to an analyst who was pointing out that this court also sort of pinned Joe Biden's ears back a bit back during his term on the student loan issue, not allowing him to take some of the sweeping actions on student loans. So the implication was that the court had a clear majority to try to tighten executive authority, which, over the years has gotten more and more substantial. Lydia, I want to play a little more from the president. Let's hear cut 14. Here was President Trump at the White House podium earlier today. Cut 14.
The good news is that there are methods, practices, statutes, and authorities, as recognized by the entire court in this terrible decision, and also as recognized by Congress, which they refer to, that are even stronger than the IEEPA tariffs available to me as President of the United States. And in actuality, I was very modest in my ask of other countries and businesses because I wanted to do, and it's very important, I wanted to be very well behaved because I wanted to do anything, I didn't want to do anything that would affect the decision of the court, because I understand the court. I understand how they're very easily swayed. I want to be a good boy.
Lydia, what'd you make of the president? I mean, they had a plan B, by the way. I mean, the implication here is that they knew this could happen. They have a plan B. They're looking at other statutes, and the president's already implementing in Section 122 a 10% global tariff. Now, this has a 150-day time limit on it, I think, unless Congress extends it. What do you make of the president's plan B?
Yeah, he knew this was coming, and kind of it seems like what the ruling says is basically, oh, you can't use IEEPA to enact these taxes. And so there are, as you mentioned, all of these other federal regulations that allow him to impose tariffs. So I think he's literally going to do the same thing, just in a slightly different way, right? There's Section 338, it's a response to foreign discrimination. There's Section 201 that protects domestic industries. There's Section 891 that he can levy retaliatory taxes on things. So I think he can cobble together very much the same regime that he already had in place. I think the question that they're going to have to deal with, and which the Supreme Court did not choose to weigh in on, is what happens to the revenues that have already been raised.
The
so
questions of refunds. The questions of refunds. Great question. Like, I tell you what, Lydia, once you hang on, let's pick this up on the other side of the break, because the court said it may be a mess, in short, is what they said, and I think that's probably true. Lydia Moynihan from the New York Post is our guest here on the Scott Jennings Show. Let me share a quick word from a listener. This word coming in from Rod in Texas. Rod says, I'm 64 years old. I used to build houses on the side. Years of hard physical work left me with excruciating back pain that became unbearable. So what did Rod do? He finally gave Relief Factor a try, and within 4 days, most of that pain subsided. Over the next few weeks, things got better and better. Rod's words were simple, and I quote, being pain-free is indescribable. Now, we've been using Relief Factor in the Jennings household. My father, as you know, if you're a regular listener, is no spring chicken, but he is hopping around like one thanks to his religious use of Relief Factor. It has worked for my father, who's down in Florida enjoying some golf as we speak. If pain is holding you back, my advice, try Relief Factor's 3-week quick start and see how it works for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. Ask yourself, how would it feel to be out of pain? More on the breaking news. The Supreme Court tosses out the president's tariffs, but he's pivoting to a plan B. We'll discuss more after this. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
It is Friday, February 20th. Breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show. Thanks for joining us here on Salem. The breaking news, of course, the Supreme Court has struck down the president's tariffs in a 6-3 ruling. The president has reacted, and he is installing other tariffs under other statutory authorities. My guest is New York Post writer, journalist, and excellent pundit herself, Lydia Moynihan. Now, Lydia, I'm going to keep you around for this. It's breaking news, so we're breaking all the rules today. But we're going to keep with a segment here that we like to call the Relief Factor Pain of the Week.
And now, the Relief Factor Pain of the Week. Oh.
We're calling an audible, Lydia. The Relief Factor Pain of the Week. It's going to be Donald Trump's Pain of the Week, the United States Supreme Court. This is the Relief Factor Pain of the Week. We had a whole other thing prepared, but if you're Donald Trump right now, the major pain of the week is the United States Supreme Court, and he certainly exhibited those pains at the White House podium earlier today. Let's hear a little bit from the president. Earlier today, he talked about how the opinion was ridiculous. Let's hear cut 15. Donald Trump, a few minutes ago.
To show you how ridiculous the opinion is, however, the court said that I'm not allowed to charge even $1. I can't charge $1. Can't charge $1. I would have used 1 penny, but we don't make the pennies anymore. We save money. Can't charge $1 to any country under IEPA. Not $1. I assume to protect other countries. This must have been done to protect those other countries, certainly not the United States of America, which they should be interested in protecting. That's what they're supposed to be protecting. But I am allowed to cut off any and all trade or business with that same country. In other words, I can destroy the trade. I can destroy the country. I'm even allowed to impose a foreign country destroying embargo. I can embargo. I can do anything I want, but I can't charge $1.
Lydia, does the president have a point about this? Is the Supreme Court a little disjointed in its logic?
Yeah, Kavanaugh also called out the cognitive dissonance in his dissenting opinion, saying the way that they're interpreting the status, the president can block all imports from China. He could do that, but he can't even put a $1 tariff on goods imported from China. And that approach does not make much sense. One other thing I was thinking of too, I mean, it's interesting. John Roberts has seemed to flip-flop on this, on what taxes presidents can levy. Because, of course, if you remember, the Obamacare decision went up to the Supreme Court. And that was all about, can Obama levy a tax, essentially, that's for healthcare? And in that case, Roberts was like, yeah, that's fine. And evidently he's changed his tune when it comes to this. But, you know, Scott, it is unfortunate that it kind of feels like in this term, it's all up to Donald Trump, and Congress just kind of twiddles its thumbs. Like, why? The reason that he even had to do this in the first place is because Congress is so feckless. They basically pass one piece of legislation over the span of 2 years. We have the House, the Senate, the White House. Why is Congress not working overnight to get some sort of movement done to basically restore exactly what, and Trump's, again, doing it on his own. Why isn't Congress helping him? That's what is astounding to me.
Lydia Moynihan, that's the voice you're hearing. She's from the New York Post. Lydia, we were discussing before we went to the break about the possibility that this tariff revenue might have to be refunded. The court was acknowledging that that might be the case, and I assume people will now litigate this out, but we have taken in billions upon billions of dollars in tariff revenue in this country. What's your view? What are you hearing people say about the idea that the Treasury would have to start sending checks? And I guess the next question is, where do they go? Who do you send the checks to? It's a little messy, is it not?
Yeah, that whole part is messy. And the idea that, the Supreme Court can say, oh, you can't do this, but then basically not provide any guidance on where that money is supposed to go.
Yeah.
It's completely a mess. And it's interesting, though, the fact that it was raising so much money, the fact that we've been getting so much income as a result of this may actually be part of the reason that it was a difficult argument for Trump to make, because he was saying, look at all these revenues, instead of saying it was just being done, right, for those foreign policy sort of IEPA considerations. But that's going to be a huge issue, and we're going to see so much litigation. Probably,
a lot of court action. A lot of court action to come, Lydia, and there's refunds. It's a total mess. Well, the pain of the week, Lydia, you were here for it. The United States Supreme Court, Donald Trump's pain of the week. If you're dealing with pain, you can try Relief Factor's 3-week quick start by calling 1-800-4RELIEF or visiting relieffactor.com. Lydia Moynihan, you're a great guest. We'll have you back often, and I'll see you in the green room sometime soon. We'll take a break. When we come back, Friday Punditry. Don't miss it. Breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
One man standing tall against the leftist mob. Here's Scott Jennings.
Breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show here on Friday, February 20th. Thanks for being with us here on Salem. We've been tracking the news out of the United States Supreme Court today, where the court threw out the president's global tariff policy 6-3. At least they threw it out under the current statute that he had been using to justify it. But the president had a plan B, and he spoke to reporters in the White House briefing room. Let's hear cut 16. What will the president do next? Here he is.
Effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs. They're existing, they're there. Remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122, over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies.
So the president lost his authority under IEPA, which was the statute that he had been using, but he is pivoting to other statutes here to keep a 10% global tariff in place. Joining me to react to all of this breaking news and for some other Friday punditry is Julian Epstein. Julian is a political commentator and writer. He is formerly the Democrat chief counsel to the House Judiciary Committee, as well as staff director for the House Oversight Committee. Julian, welcome for your inaugural appearance here on the Scott Jennings Show. Glad to have you.
So pleased to be with you, Scott. So nice to meet you. I catch you on the 10 o'clock show, and I admire the stuff that you do.
Well, it's a wild show, and I'll be out there tonight with Abby and the gang, and I'm sure we'll have a raucous conversation about all this breaking news today. And I guess that's where we'll start, Julian. I'm interested. You're one of the more experienced Democratic hands in Washington, D.C. I see you on cable TV commenting on things from time to time. How did the Supreme Court ruling strike you? What's your reaction to the president's comments in reaction to them?
Well, it was very predictable, Scott, under the major questions doctrine, which I think the left should take a pause before it pops too many champagne bottles. It's a straightforward reading of the major questions doctrine. The authority under IEPA wasn't explicit, and the court is moving in that direction in a whole host of areas, and this has big implications for the administrative state. I have a sort of unconventional take on this, Scott. I think this is actually a win for the president. And the reason I think it's a win for the president is because I think the economy is going to have a big bounce as a result, because the markets don't like tariffs. So I think you'll see economic numbers in the next several weeks go up. The president still has the political cudgel of saying, I am fighting for the working class and the Democrats are fighting for the elites. He still has that issue. In fact, I think this strengthens his hand. He has other tariff authorities, as you pointed out, and as the clip pointed out. They're more narrow authorities. They're a little bit more cumbersome. It's not as plenary, so his club isn't as big under the other statutes, but he's still got it. And the implications of this decision, Scott, not to get too far into the weeds, is the Supreme Court is saying under the major questions doctrine, unless you have explicit authority, the executive branch cannot promulgate rules and regulations. Okay, so the president took maybe a lump on this one, but this has huge implications for what the administrative state can do in the areas of environmental regulation and all kinds of other regulation. Without explicit authority, the administrative state is going to grind to a halt. So on the whole, I think this is not a bad day for Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's undoubtedly apoplectic about this. I've spoken to him about it before, interviewed him about it before, and he loves having this authority. But your argument is that it may actually turn out to be a good thing. Were you surprised to see the president and the White House go ahead and immediately roll out a plan B? Would you have done that if you were them, or would you have given this a moment to breathe?
Oh, I've predicted this for a long time. I predicted that the court would invalidate the IEPA tariffs, but the president could come right back under the 62 law. There's several different laws, and come back with other tariffs that, again, give him a club, not as big a club, but still a club. So yes, and I would have done it. And look, I mean, you can argue about this from a legal point of view, about the delegation of authority, and sort of get the legal egghead stuff. I'll tell you why I like plenary authority for a president with tariffs. And that is mostly because, Scott, and I think you've made this point before, Congress is moribund. Congress isn't doing anything right now. So if you have a president, if you have a Congress that is neutered, and then a president that is neutered, you basically have stasis going on while the rest of the world, and particularly the revisionist powers, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, can operate with a free hand as authoritarians. And they can take advantage of us any way they want, and sort of other countries as well, whether it's Europe, whether it's European countries or elsewhere, understand we're straitjacketed, and then they can therefore take advantage and play us as suckers on trade. The benefit of the president having this power is that it is a huge deterrent towards other countries to manipulate and try to take advantage of the United States, and particularly the working class of the United States. It also, if you look at what the president has been able to do on the 8 peace deals, whether it's Azerbaijan or Pakistan, India, or Ethiopia, Egypt, or, you go on down the list, Gaza, a lot of what the president has been able to accomplish has been under the threat of tariffs. You take that away and combine that with Congress being neutered, then you're talking about a perception of a paper tiger out there in the rest of the world, while a lot of the world means us no good. So I think in this era of filibuster and the cloture vote, the idea of the president having a cudgel is a good thing from a policy point of view, leaving aside all the legal arguments.
Well, the president, Julian, agrees with you wholeheartedly. When I talked to him about this last September, when this appeals court ruling came down and they were preparing to go to the Supreme Court on it, he was explaining to me that he believes that having this authority has strengthened his hand in every diplomatic conversation that he's ever had, that it has allowed him to negotiate peace deals around the world, that it gives him a tool in all of his conversations with foreign leaders, and that if you take it away, it makes the president weak, and weak president on the world stage is ultimately bad for world stability. Our guest today, Julian Epstein, is a Democrat political commentator and writer. You've seen him on Fox News from time to time, former Democrat chief counsel to the House Judiciary Committee and staff director for the House Oversight Committee, very experienced Democratic operative in Washington, D.C. Julian, you were discussing some of the politics here, getting up to the edge of it, about the president's relationship with the working class in this country, and his constituency, and the reason that he was elected president twice is a lot of people that when you were a Democrat working in the House, the Clinton Democrats, all these voters, union guys, blue-collar guys, those were your constituents. Those were Democrats. Those 100%. Were Bill Clinton Democrats. And they have changed parties. They have come over to Donald Trump because they believe that he speaks for them. Give us a little political insight and a little context here from your perspective on the ruling today and the larger situation with this president and his relationship with these working class Americans who used to be Democrats and now are kind of voting Republican.
Yeah, and what I always tell my Democratic friends is that the working class voters haven't changed at all. It's the Democrats that have changed. If you were to draw a Venn diagram, Scott, between President Trump and Bill Clinton, for example, you would see an enormous amount of overlap. Balanced budget, the era of big government is over. Closed and secure borders, 100,000 cops on the street, mandatory minimum prison sentences. You sort of go on down the line, deregulation. You go on almost every major policy issue. And President Trump and Bill Clinton are not that far apart. And in the 1990s, early 2000s, the Democratic Party was very much about building for the future. You remember Clinton's line in 1996, a bridge to the 21st century. It was about building. Now the party has changed, and the credo of the party has changed, Scott. The credo of the Democratic Party is grievance on the West, identity politics, building the welfare state. Its vocabulary is increasingly when they disagree with you, rather than explaining through reasoning why they disagree with you, it's to call you names. You're an authoritarian, you're a Nazi, you're a bigot. The emotional tenor of the Democrats has become one of sort of caterwauling and this sort of rage amphetamine that it gets by the oppositional politics. This is a very, very, very different Democratic Party than it was in the 1990s. And I think the working class has perceived two things. One is that the ruling class, the Wall Street class, the economic elites have been screwing them for the last 20 or 30 years. And part of this is what this tariff fight is partially about, whether you agree the tariffs are working or not. The goal of the president is to redeem what has been stolen by the working class, according to how the working class sees it. I think the working class also sees the cultural extremism, whether it is the critical gender and gender ideology, whether it's critical race and race preferences for in-groups and discrimination against out-groups, whether it is climate extremism, which has been a disaster in Europe and could have been a disaster here. Didn't quite become a disaster here, but it's been a disaster in Europe. And I think the working class looks at all of these issues and think the Democratic Party no longer represents it. And that's why it has shifted to the Republicans. For example, if you're on 10 o'clock tonight and they're, sort of moralizing, which is what the Democrats do. I hear them moralizing and calling people epithets more than explaining. Ask them what policies that the president was able to accomplish using tariffs do they oppose? Do they think any of those 8 peace deals were bad? Would they like to have seen the hostages still in Gaza? Would they like to have seen India and Pakistan on the brink of a nuclear war? Do they think that the deal that the president was able to get with the EU on trade was a bad deal? Would they revise that? Do they think that getting tough with China, the way Joe Biden said he was trying to do, using the same tariffs, was a bad thing? Did they denounce Biden for that? I mean, when a lot of the moralizing that you get from the left peels away very simply with a couple of questions, and you're very good at that.
We'll be fighting it out tonight. I assume they're going to come up. Julian, I got to stop you because we're going to take a break, but we are going to come back with you after that break because we got to get your winner of the week. Julian Epstein is our pundit of the week here on Friday Punditry. It's a breaking news edition of the Scott Jennings Show. We're coming right back on Salem. Stay with us.
The voice of reason, common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Friday, February 20th, home stretch here on the Scott Jennings Show, a breaking news edition of the show as we've been reacting to the Supreme Court's ruling 6-3, throwing out the president's global tariff policy. But the president had a plan B, and he is installing under other statutory authorities 10% global tariff. Some of the national security and commodity-specific tariffs were not touched by the Supreme Court, so not all tariffs are ruled invalid, but the Liberation Day tariffs that we saw last April have been tossed out, at least under the IEEPA statute that the president was using. Friday Punditry, our friend Julian Epstein is here. He is a political commentator and a writer, and formerly the Democrat chief counsel to the House Judiciary Committee, and he was also staff director for the House Oversight Committee. You see him on Fox News and other cable outlets from time to time. Julian, it's this time of the show, and thank you for being here, by the way, that we always ask our Friday pundit for their winner of the week. So, in American politics, Julian Epstein, who won the week?
On the Democratic side, it's none of the above in the presidential contest because all of the candidates look like they're not ready for prime time, especially after Munich. On the Republican side, it's absolutely Marco Rubio. His speech that he gave in Munich is, I think, the most important speech that was given in the last year, and basically covering what the West, since the Enlightenment, has done for humanity in terms of economic prosperity for billions, not just in the West, but beyond the West, and securing individual liberty. The left runs around with this cartoon in its head that the West is somehow oppressive. The West is the most liberating, the most protective of individual rights, the most affirmative action minded, the most responsible for lifting all of humanity out of poverty in the last 2 centuries. And when Marco Rubio reminded the Europeans of the great tradition, starting really with the Reformation and leading through the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, the democracy revolutions, what the West has done for humanity, they had no option but to get up and give him a standing ovation. It was a powerful, powerful speech.
Rubio gave the speech of a lifetime over in Munich and absolutely did himself and the Republican Party and the Trump administration and all of the West a world of good in the way he put all of those issues. I'm going to give you my loser of the week, and I'm going to get a little granular in Democratic primary politics. My loser of the week, Jasmine Crockett down in Texas, one of the candidates running for the United States Senate. It became very clear this week that the Democratic powers that be are all behind James Tallarico, including cooking up this hoax with Stephen Colbert, this supposed forbidden interview that Trump was trying to censor. It was all completely made up, and it was all done in service, Julian, of trying to boost Tallarico in the Texas Democrat Senate primary, and it was done to hurt and get rid of and marginalize Jasmine Crockett. So winner of the week, Marco Rubio. Loser of the week, Jasmine Crockett, here on Friday Punditry. One last bit of breaking news. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has weighed in on the tariff ruling. Julian, let's get to Scott Bessent here in Cut 19. Get your reaction.
Let's be clear about what today's ruling was and what it wasn't. Despite the misplaced gloating from Democrats, ill-informed media outlets, and the very people who gutted our industrial base, the court did not rule against President Trump's tariffs. 6 justices simply ruled that IEEPA authorities cannot be used to raise even $1 of revenue. This administration will invoke alternative legal authorities to replace the IEEPA tariffs. We will be leveraging Section 232 and Section 301 tariff authorities that have been validated through thousands of legal challenges. Treasury's estimates show that the use of Section 122 authority, combined with potentially enhanced Section 232 and Section 301 tariffs, will result in virtually unchanged tariff revenue in 2026. And with
Julian Epstein, 15 seconds. We'll give you the last word. Your reaction to Bessent.
After Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent is the administration's best spokesman, and from a legal point of view, everything he said is exactly correct.
Yeah, the administration's obviously got Plan B in place, and we will see them rolling that out this afternoon. Our Friday pundit, Julian Epstein, your inaugural appearance here on the Scott Jennings Show. Very pleased to meet you, sir. You did a great job, and we
Likewise.
will have you back in the near future, and really enjoyed your perspective. That is going to wrap it up for the week here on the Scott Jennings Show. We're grateful for everyone listening in and sticking with us here on this Breaking News Friday. The news is the court, 6-3, throws out the president's Liberation Day tariffs, but President Trump swings back with other tariff authorities. Scott's out. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you Monday. Common sense for the American people.